Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
Today we are, making up for...
We're putting an end cap is what I was.
Yeah,
I was ready for that.
We'll do an end cap for the Black History Month last month. And the reason why is because we read a very good but not very Black History involved story that I was told was Black History involved just from the internet. The internet
And
told
I
me.
believed Matt, so I was like, let's do it.
Yeah. But I didn't know. I never read it before.
I know, no, you're fine.
So, we didn't get a chance to really hit it hard. So I wanted to focus on a Black character that maybe not anybody had heard of before or a lot of people don't know about. And that is the character of Martha Washington. And she, it was created by Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons in the 90s. Specifically 1990, I think, is when the first issue of this came out. Okay. There's only 15 issues because it's always been put together in like many limited series. So we're reading the first limited series, which is the first 4 issues called "Give Me Liberty," and the cool thing about this series is it spans her whole life. So it starts from like birth to death and everything in between, like the high points of her life,
The low points,
and the low points. But I mean, like the interesting points in her life throughout that span. And it's very cool because this is basically like if Watchmen was on crack or something. Like it's just very like very weird, very like hyperbolic, very bombastic, I would say. Like the Watchmen has a very pulled in tone, like the writer knows exactly what's happening, and he's making it very clear for everybody. And there's little writer mysteries and stuff, but it is concise in its telling. Whereas this, there is definitely a plot and a storyline going on, but sometimes you're just like, what the fuck's happening? Like, because there's just so much weird shit on the page, and they kind of throw it at you and expect you to be able to figure it out as you're reading it. So, one thing I like is like throughout it, there's a person will be reading a magazine and then they'll just cut. Like you turn the page and it's just that magazine ads and stuff, or the newspaper ads and actual like columns from the newspaper. Yeah. So in that way, it is like Watchmen, where at the end of like a chapter in Watchmen, he'll be like, "And here's an essay that one of the characters wrote when they were 15. Go." And like you have to read this, paper. And a lot of people just skip that shit in Watchmen. They're like, "I'm not reading this. What is this, a book? I'm not reading this stuff." So this kind of feels like that. It feels like this might have been. And also because the artist is Dave Gibbons, who also is the artist for Watchmen, I like to compare the two. This kind of feels like Frank Miller's, like his version of something like that. It's not like the Watchmen, like it's not deconstructing superheroes in that way. It's deconstructing America, I would say, and politics of America in general, but in a very interesting way. It doesn't go the way that you would think. And it's specifically from like a late 80s, early 90s point of view, because I'm sure they were working on this in the late 80s and it came out in 1990. So I think that adds a little bit of color. That's fun looking because this goes from the early 90s into the future for it, which we've lived through.
We've already lived through, yeah.
So it's kind of funny when they cut to like 2012 and this is America and you're like, that's funny. So I like that about this, but let's just get into it. So the first issue is called Homes and Gardens because it's about her being born and growing up. And this is interesting. You watched Candyman, the first Candyman, right?
Yeah.
So she is born and raised in a place called Cabrini Greens, which is the place that Sandman, like the projects of Sandman, or not Sandman, Candyman take place in. Why did I say Sandman? Did I say Sandman at the beginning?
No, you said Candyman.
I said Candyman. Okay. So, Candyman, the movie from the early 90s. Obviously, that Cabrini Greens projects was very much in the public conscious, even so much that a British person who is Clive Barker wrote the movie, Candyman, that takes place there. And so this also takes place in that. That was kind of like like a tenement building, I guess, for the early 90s and late 80s. I don't think it's around anymore. I think they've demoed it since then. But it was like the bad part of town, I guess you'd say, in Chicago. And it was like notorious for crime and gang violence and stuff like that, and drug use and whatnot. So, but it was also notorious for, there are just people trying to live here that are normal people because they can't afford anywhere else. And they have to live in that crime and everything. So
kind of getting caught in the crossfire of everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we start off with a Patrick Henry quote, which is great. We're just like, give me liberty or give me death, that kind of thing. And then we start off in 1995 in the hospital, and we get narration from Martha Washington herself. And we see that the mom is in the hospital giving birth to Martha. And Martha says, Mom said it was the nicest, cleanest hospital that she'd ever been to. And then we're seeing the reality of what's actually going on, where it's a crappy hospital. The doctors don't want to be there. It's a miracle that she's born and healthy in this hospital, I would say. And the dad is not very into it. But, the mom told Martha, like, oh, your dad was so loving in the hospital and everything. So it just seems like you definitely get a picture of the real world versus, what the mom's trying to sugarcoat, the world for her daughter. And then we see in 1996, the president was elected. And it's President Rexel, right?
Yeah, Rexel or Rexel.
Rexel, yeah. And so President Rexel is very much supposed to be President Reagan. And this was written before the 1992 elections, but this is kind of like a what would or could have happened if President Reagan just decided to suspend the 22nd Amendment and run for president on multiple times and just kept winning. So in 1996, the president got elected, President Rexel, and he was like a hard-on crime, kind of president. And so he increased police around there. And one thing I like is every time the president gets elected, there's like the first time it's just normal cops and they're like normal blue hats or whatever. The second time it's cops in riot gear. Third time it's cops in even more hardcore riot gear. The fourth time they have some kind of like sci-fi,
like futuristic job. Yeah.
It's like every time they get more and more bulky and more militarized as he gets elected. But we start off in 1996 after she's born, the year after she's born. And we see there's a riot going on in the Greens, and the police are beating people to death. And specifically, they kill her father during this riot or protest. And then that's what Martha Washington says. She hates President Rexel for this. But he keeps getting elected in 2000, 2001. And we see around Cabrini Green as Martha Washington grows up. Like, these are all just really quick cuts because nothing of significance that we are following happens in there. It's just supposed to give you a tone of what this world is like.
Yeah, you just see, like, the only thing you see and really know is, like, the Green is a shitty place. It's basically a prison for people who haven't done anything wrong, is what she says.
Yeah, and they actually do make it like you can't go in or out at will. Like, you have to either have a pass or something like that. They eventually, like, surround it with a fence and all this shit. So it literally becomes a prison. And that's what she grew up in. So we see her with her little Raggedy Ann doll, and that's like her only comfort. And she has a hard time sleeping, but it's because, there's always police copters around, and it's just a bad place in general. And one thing I really liked is they talk about how for when she's like in 2002, when it's Thanksgiving time, or no, it's Christmas time, and the president is dressed up like Santa Claus on TV, and she's talking about how much she hates the president. And he's saying, like, well, everybody in America got a turkey from us. So they've provided everybody a turkey because they're so great. The government's so great. They've given you a little turkey.
You've got your scraps.
And it literally is scraps because it's like TV tray, dinner turkeys, not like an actual turkey, but because regular turkeys are too expensive and probably extinct in this world, if I had to guess. but yeah, so that's just kind of like her life so far, and also like you get a bit of what the government's like. I did think it was like there are things that the government does in this that I'm like, that's fairly similar. Like, here's your scraps, country.
Yeah.
While we take a lot of stuff from you. So.
And the mom is still trying, like, she's trying to
be positive,
protect and sugarcoat it for your daughter. Like, oh no, this is good. And then she's got a brother.
She got two brothers.
Two brothers, that's right.
Yeah. And it feels like the mom isn't necessarily sugarcoating it for her daughter, but it's like is trying to overcome her circumstances by like force of mental power or something. Like she actually believes like a positive outlook on life, even though she's living in the green and with her 3 children and no husband, and her husband was killed by the police and all this stuff. It seems like, because later on, the mom has a very positive outlook, like, there's no way she's dead.
Yeah.
I knew instantly. And like, we find out like one of her brothers does get killed in the green, or in prison, I think. He gets killed. He gets killed when, I guess there was 3 brothers possibly, because later on her brother joins the military.
Yeah.
And then dies in that. So, but then we cut to 2002 where she dresses like a boy while she's going out around town or around the green, because it's just dangerous to be a girl and look like a girl. So she kind of dresses in very baggy clothes and covers her hair and stuff. And she's only, what, like 6 or 7 right now? I'm thinking. Well, it was 95, so it was 2002. So yeah, she's 7.
She's about 7.
And so some guy just randomly kidnaps her and she drops her Raggedy Ann doll. And I only bring up the Raggedy Ann because it comes later on. It becomes important to her because it was like her only thing that she cared about as a child, like her only possession.
Yeah.
And so it means a lot that when he picks her up and kidnaps her, she drops the doll and the doll is left in the mud. And then he takes her to a pedophile, I'm assuming, like some gang leader.
Yeah.
Like he seems like a pimp or something who asked this boy to bring a boy to him.
I figured he was either trafficking or.
But it seemed like he wanted a boy that night or something. Like the gang leader wanted a boy that night.
I thought maybe he could be using. Maybe he needs boys to.
Well, because when the kidnapper boy brings Martha into the room of the gang leader, they pulled down her pants for some reason. I'm assuming he was going to molest her at that moment.
They pulled down their pants? I didn't notice.
Yeah, she says, and the next thing I knew, my pants were pulled down, because she's buttoning her pants right there. So,
okay. I totally missed that line.
It says, hold on.
Oh yeah, the Pope pulled down my pants and starts yelling at Thunderball.
Yeah, and he starts yelling at Thunderball because he wanted a boy that night.
Gotcha.
So
okay. I totally missed that.
Thunderball kidnapped Martha thinking it was a boy that this guy could rape.
I think I was sidetracked because there's like an enforcer dude who's like sitting there the whole time.
Who's
in like
that
a blue
guy? Tiny Lister? He looks like Tiny Lister. He totally would be played by Tiny Lister. But yeah, there's a dude in the background who's like in a separate room, really close to where they're at with the gang leader that wants to rape her, and he's just working out all buff. And when he hears that Thunderball, the kidnapper, brought the wrong kind of child to the gang leader, he stops, and then Martha's allowed to leave, luckily enough, but the buff guy goes in there and
he just picks up like a little. It's a hook, but I don't know what kind of hook that would be for it. I've seen them
like before. A meat hook.
A meat hook, okay.
Yeah, it's like you grab it. You grab the meat, so you can lift it.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, like old. But
it's a handheld meat hook.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
So he kills Thunderballs. Is his name? The kidnapper. And off screen, we just her narration just says, and I never saw Thunderballs again after that because he disappointed this gang leader and didn't get the right kind of child to rape. So then we cut to 2007 where we see Martha's growing up and she's 10 now, and she's a really smart girl, but in her school, this once again things that are very similar to our stuff. She's just learning. Like on a computer, the teacher doesn't actually teach you anything, and it's all multiple choice answer, and the answer is always President Rexall most of the time. So it's like question 23: which president repealed the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution? And it's like A, President Rexall. Question 24: which president started the United States Peace Force? C, President Rexall. It's like all of these are. She says 90% of it you could just put Rexall for all of them, and you get a B.
Yeah.
So that's how stupid their school is and how annoying it is. But in the meantime, she gets a question wrong, and to show that she's actually smart, she hacks she gets into the code of that program and just changes it so that she got it right. And it's like, oh, okay. So she's really smart actually, but this school isn't doing anything for that. It's just she's smart because she on her own time or in her own way has learned how to hack and all that kind of stuff and code and whatnot. So one of her teachers is really nice to her, the computer teacher, or I guess I don't know if he's a computer. Maybe he's the history teacher or some shit. But they all have computers in front of them. So he's trying to be nice to her. He says, "Oh wow, you're really smart if you know how to hack and stuff like that," because he catches her, I guess, cheating on that quiz or test. And but the thing is, he asks her, he's like, "Oh, if you're so smart, you should know this. You know what president crossed the Delaware?" And she goes, "Rexall." So it's like despite her smartness, she still has like a programming from the government instilling in her in school the correct answer, which is always the president is good. You know, like the president is the one who did everything. Which
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to think about. In the meantime, we do see that the PAX, they call them, but it's the what is it? The Peace
Force,
the Peace Action Force, whatever it's called. They are doing commercials that are very much like commercials. I don't know, since commercials existed for the military, where they're like, I remember in the 90s, there'd be like, the few, the proud, the Marines, and they make it all look all badass and shit. And that's basically this. They're like, we'll pay for your school. We'll do whatever you want. We'll even, like, you could be a convicted criminal, and if you join the Peace Force, all that will be wiped away. You know, like, so, and one guy says, like, I committed murder one, and it worked for me. Like, so, like, it definitely is an interesting thing that could happen, like as motivation to join. Like if you were on the run for a crime that you committed, no matter how big, you could just join the Peace Force, and they'd be like, okay, cool. Like we know who you are now. It's wiped from your record. You didn't kill anybody. Anyway, here's a gun. Go kill people for us. So I thought that was interesting, and we get that little commercial in the middle of the teacher being nice to her, bringing her sandwiches from outside of Cabrini Green, because he lives outside of Cabrini Green. And she's like, this is like the best thing I've ever tasted. I've never had a sandwich before. This is amazing, because the food that they're given by the government is very shitty. Yeah. So, like we said, it was like food
processed,
trays. Yeah.
Bland. Yeah.
And you know what? I was thinking like maybe the turkeys that the rest of the world got, or the rest of America got, that weren't like tenement buildings or like how what's it called, subsidized housing.
Yeah.
Was like actual turkey.
Maybe they got actual turkey.
But subsidized houses got, turkey TV dinners.
Got turkey loaf.
Yeah, or whatever. Or turkey in quotation marks loaf. So yeah, then we see like her favorite teacher gets killed by that muscly guy for some reason. I don't know why. I guess the gang leader sent the muscle guy with the hook to ask him something or get information from him, and he ended up killing the teacher in front of her. She ended up seeing it, and as she comes in, she gets really mad, and I guess her teacher actually stabbed the muscly guy, and she runs in, and that made him drop the hook. So she runs in and grabs the hook, and she, like, behind the muscle guy's back, because he doesn't hear her, stabs him in the neck with the hook. And the muscly guy comes after her, but she got him like right in the jugular, apparently, because he just falls down dead in front of her. And she ends up like freaking out and just being in a locker. And that's where they find her, they say. And this ends up putting her in a mental institution because it traumatizes her so bad. So they can't get her to talk because of what she's just done and seen. And so they end up putting her in a mental institution. And that's where she stays for quite a while. For 2 years, she's there. And they basically just drug the life out of her, like the personality. She just stares off in the distance and, isn't really doing anything. But she does know, like, in the moments in between the drugs wearing off and before the next one, she does realize, like, okay, I need to get out of here. But, like, then they give her another drug, and then she's, like, dead inside again.
Yeah, she's like a walking comatose patient for, basically.
Yeah, and it just so happens that one day, I guess people aren't paying attention, and she gets into an area of this facility where they're doing testing on people. It says, like, restricted, do not enter. And one thing, this is where we see the first, like, cut in of a magazine, and you get to see, like, the guard that's supposed to be watching the restricted area is sleeping, and he's got a porno mag on his lap, and we see she just picks it up and is like, what? And then we see the cover of it is called Meat Rack, and there's a naked woman on the front holding a gun, and she's in like a pair of like a bikini shorts that say
have the Peace Force logo.
Yes, exactly. And looks like she's ready for war, except she's topless and in a bikini.
Yeah.
And it says, girls of the Peace Force, what are we waiting for? Or what we're fighting for? And I just think that's like super funny because there's probably an ad just like that, but in a real magazine.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Vietnam, what we're fighting for, the ladies. The ladies of America. But yeah, so we also see there's like a segment called Rexel's War on Porn. So it seems that, this president who's been president for over 10 years now. He's like 12 years now. He's, very, I guess, conservative when it comes to pornography and stuff like that. He's also very militaristic. So, you could say he's definitely a fascist leader, I guess, a fascist president. So anyway, Martha throws down the magazine because she doesn't seem very interested in it. And she walks into the restricted area because someone inside seems to be like sending her mental signals. And when she gets into the restricted area, she sees a little girl who has a bunch of wires tied to her head or like plugged into her head. And it turns out that this girl is a psychic girl that they've been testing on, and they've made a bond. And Martha sees her and sees Raggedy Ann, like the Raggedy Ann doll that she lost earlier on.
And I mean, from all the testing, that's what they kind of make this girl out to be. Like, her face is quite stretched, and then, she's kind of bulbous in the head because of all these little like switches and plugs they have in her head.
Yeah, and there's more than one. There's a bunch of different kids, but all the other ones aren't the ones talking to her. And so as Martha walks in, all of a sudden the scientists doing the experimentations are like, who the heck is this? How'd she get in here? And they immediately take her into control and I guess choke her out and make her fall asleep or whatever, and then put her back in her cell. So, but this was like the first time she calls her, I guess is a girl, a little girl. You can't really tell by the drawing because she's so deformed by the experiments that you can't really tell the sex, but later on they say she, so, and she calls her Raggy Ann. So like in her mind, that's Raggy Ann, that's her name. So then we get a newspaper cutting in of some disasters that happened throughout the world during this year, the same year that this happened with Martha. And we see that Saudi Arabia was bombed, or like oil fields in Saudi Arabia were nuked almost, or like laser
was
fired.
laser cannon.
Laser cannon.
I like that. Yeah, we got future weapons.
We got to think like this is when Star Wars was being talked about. Not Star Wars the movie, Star Wars the program where we'd have lasers above Earth that Reagan started and never really went anywhere. But so yeah, these lasers are around Earth in this reality, and one of them shot the oil fields in Saudi Arabia, and that caused like a natural disaster of the oil wells, all of them being on fire.
Yeah, and apparently Saudi Arabia was like a close friend of ally of America, but not anymore.
Yeah, John, they had all the oil.
What are you talking about?
And so yeah, now they're not friends because they're like, what the fuck? You shot us with one of your satellites. And the president's saying, oh, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. In the meantime, there's also some natural disasters going on in America. In Connecticut, there's apparently something burning on fire. I don't know if it's like a toxic waste facility or something, but either way.
That also sounds weird. Like something's
going on where something's burning in the middle of a Midwestern town.
And there's a bunch of toxic smoke and fumes
coming up.
That's so weird.
I don't understand how this comic predicted a lot of stuff that's going on. But anyway, so that's going on. Also, they talk about the war, the ongoing war that America's been having in over 40 countries where they send their Peace Force to make sure things are secured around the world. So,
as I was reading this comic, I'm like, why has this one not been like reprinted and like not reprinted, but not as like well in the zeitgeist and well known? Because like, I
don't know. I think it's because it's a Dark Horse book.
Okay,
it's a little bit more under the radar, even though it's Frank Miller. He has, because like his art style changed in the 2000s and he kind of fell out of favor with his writing style. People don't talk about him as much other than Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, Batman. But some of these auxiliary works I think are fantastic and definitely have a poignant, interesting, point of view. So, and they definitely relate to certain things that are happening in our current future. So, and also at the same time, another thing going on is the Apache Nation. The president has given them an oil well or like an oil refinery facility, as like, okay, you get your own land now. We're going to separate from you, and we're going to give you this oil refinery, and there you go. You don't have to deal with it anymore.
Well, he's talking about it, but he hasn't done that.
Oh yeah, he hasn't done that yet.
Only because of what comes up.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess it's just the chief of the Apaches is talking about how he wants this, and they're trying to demand it and all that kind of stuff. So, and then the other thing that happens is something that actually happened under Ronald Reagan, where the president closes a bunch of mental institutions and just releases the homeless people on the street. So that's what happened.
Did that happen?
That happened in California, and that's why there's a lot of homeless people in California, specifically, or on the streets at least in California, like in San Francisco and those kind of big city areas. And that's what happens in this comic. The president does the same thing, and he just closes the mental institutions. And I guess they've had Martha, under sedation for a really long time since she broke into that area on accident, because she seems really, really out of it, because she's just staring up at the gates of this mental facility, and she's kind of pining and trying to claw her way back in, but there's nothing there anymore. It's just pretty much an empty, destroyed building now. And people are going around in like health facility suits, like they look like they're wearing like the big metal mirrors on their forehead, like a doctor, but they have on like riot gear at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is the the health service or whatever, and they're actually like a police force, not just doctors. And so, and so they're coming up to homeless people that are on the street, like throwing up and, begging for money and stuff. And they're rounding them up, and they make it sound like they are basically just euthanizing them.
What are you talking about? They're just giving them a tranquilizer, he said.
Well, they give them a tranquilizer, and then they make them disappear. I know you did that, but I'm saying for the listeners, they give them a tranquilizer and then throw them in the back of the van, and then no one ever sees them again. So I'm assuming there's just a pit or something where they're throwing all these mentally ill people that aren't, good for society. So, so one of these men goes up to Martha, because she's amongst this crowd of homeless people, but she fights back because she hasn't had her medication for a while. It's starting to come back a little bit. So she wants to get away, and she ends up running into an alley. This guy chases her, and she takes a bottle and breaks it on the wall and stabs this motherfucker in the neck. She totally kills this guy. Then she takes his credit cards, goes to a ATM, which she's been known to hack a bit. And now that she's kind of clear-minded, her mind isn't on drugs anymore, she remembers her old skills of hacking when she was younger. And keep in mind, this has only been like 2 years. So she's 12 now. This is her 12. And she takes the credit card, goes to the ATM, which I thought this was funny because at the time this was written, ATMs weren't very ubiquitous. So she's like, it's one of those fancy cash machines on every corner or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's funny. Like he just thinks like it's a novelty kind of thing back then, but now it's pretty common. And then so she takes the guy's card, hacks a little bit when she gets into the machine, and changes his bank account from $32 to $32,000, and then takes all the money out that she can. So she's got a bunch of money, and she goes on the run. And then we see that a new president has been elected. We get like a time cover, but it's not Time. It's just says Man of the Year. Yeah, Era is the name of the magazine, and it says Man of the Year. And it's Howard Johnson Nissen is the president now. And I guess President Rexall. Oh, did we say?
Yeah, it says, because there's a blurb, and this is one of my favorite parts of the thing.
Yeah.
So there was some kind of bomb that blew up near the White House that put President Rexall in a coma. And
it wasn't a bomb. It was, what happened was Saudi Arabia retaliated. That's what it's off page because it's all in this article.
It's a firebomb, they said.
Right, but what I mean is it's like a missile that they launched, I think, and bombed us because our laser shot them. So
yeah, but the key part of this is it's the president. He didn't die, but he's in a coma. He's like crazy injured, and he's in a coma now.
President Rexall. And
they just so happen to have the president, the vice president, the attorney general, and every member of the cabinet just about, except for the...
Well, they were all at the White House at the time. No, I know, but you didn't say that. So they all get bombed.
I was getting.
Oh, okay.
You're right. But he got them all except for the acting secretary of the agriculture, who happened to not be at the White House. When
he was
happened.
sick that day. He had a fever, so he stayed home.
And because he's acting because he's only been in this position for 2 weeks because the actual the old one had like some kind of like scandal.
His name was like Senator Placebo or something like that.
Yeah, and he had a scandal that was. They all had scandals, but he had a scandal that was worse enough just for like him to like get out, like be had
impeached
to
or whatever,
from his position. So he's only been in this position for 2 weeks, happened to not be at the White House, and now he's president.
And the funny thing is, I like the way that's like this is definitely probably like Frank Miller's view on politics in general, but this guy doesn't seem to be like a terrible person at first. But then throughout this story, he definitely becomes more and more power hungry and totalitarian and all that kind of stuff. And he doesn't stop any of the policies that are already going on from Rexel. He just doesn't push certain things as hard and pushes other things harder. So, like, basically, he makes it seem like, oh, this guy's better than Rexel, but then he's not actually. But when he gets hired, I will also say, that idea of like, oh, all the people died except this one person is kind of like the premise for Why the Last Man, or in the Last Man, when the mom, who was like the Secretary of Agriculture like this or something, ends up becoming president because all the men above her died, and she was like the next in line.
That's true.
Technically. So that was written in the 2000s. So this is from 1990. So this is, the original maybe, idea from that. So.
And now he's going to say another key point that's he's going to save the soul of America.
Yeah, he's saving the soul of America. He ends up doing what Rexall wasn't going to do and meets with the Apache leaders, and he's the president that gives them the oil refinery that they had taken over and had hostages for and stuff. So he kind of reminds me of like a Jimmy Carter fellow at first, where Jimmy Carter was doing the like Iran hostage situations and stuff and trying to talk it out, while other people were saying maybe we should just fucking go in there with SEAL Team 6 or something and like murder everybody and kill everybody. So things like that are there's like real life similar things that happen, but that's like the main thing. This Apache thing that happens is
he also creates a disarmament treaty with
everybody. He stops. He takes all the soldiers. He says, "Oh, we shouldn't be in all these different areas with the Peace Corps." So he takes them away from all these different areas where we were keeping the peace, but it actually says they were at war. Like we were at war with over 40 nations because we just had military there making sure that those countries were staying on our best side, I guess you'd say. And but then the funny thing is, and this is why I said like he's not really a great guy, is because he just takes that military force and directs them into a different area and invades Brazil to save the rainforest, because he thinks the rainforest is very important to save. It's almost completely killed off now by burger corporations.
Yeah.
There's basically McDonald's, but it's not McDonald's. It's called
Fat Boy.
Fat Boy Burger has taken over like large areas like that of big, green areas as pastures. It's cutting all the trees down.
That also sounds very familiar and like something that is happening.
Sure, and I just the concept of I believe that this is important and I'm America, so I'm going to be able to send my military and just take over a part of a country.
Yeah.
And like things like that. I'm like, that's interesting that he has that in there, because it's not like a black and white thing. It's not like he's saying I think this is what should be done. It's like the fallout from this lasts through the entire book, and it's not necessarily a good thing.
Oh no.
So even though you might think he's doing it for good reasons, should the government be sending in forces for good reasons, whatever those in quotation good reasons might be, just to invade a country or do what they think is right, the president thinks is a good thing. So, but either way, this also makes it so the PAX begins to, like the police force begins to really ramp up their efforts in recruiting. So they say like, yes, for sure, 100%, murder one anybody, please. We want all of you to join. Everything will be paid for after you're out of the military. you'll be given, a fucking medal and a set of steak knives, like everything you could think of, they give them. And so Martha sees this, and now we see her, and she is in a better place. She's mentally, seems happier, and she's at least living. And
off of that money that she
yeah, she stole that money, and she's able to like at least live somewhat because she's in like regular clothes and stuff. But she sees this and says, "Oh, she's still on the run for a murder at this moment." So she's like, "Oh, well, if I join the police force, I can just at least get that wiped off my record." But then she also thinks like, "Oh shit, if my mom hears about this, she's gonna be pissed because my older brother died in the police force." So. Or the Peace Force, I should say.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
The Peace Force police is
it's the same thing. So, and I'll say, like, later on, the Peace Force is used as, like, a police force everywhere and in America. It's interesting how if you build up a military, you'll find a use for them no matter what. So, so she joins, and she is not, like, a phenom or anything. I liked this because it very much makes her seem like a real person. Like, she just joins. The only thing they've given her that's been kind of, like, above standard is the hacking ability.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like Deus Ex Machina that they needed to have in this a little bit, just so she's good with computers. Yeah. Later on, computers come up and she needs to be able to get
like she's still strong and like she's obviously turning her body into a soldier weapon.
Right, but she's doing what all the other soldiers are doing.
Yeah, exactly. She's not like a standout there or like oh man, she's more powerful than anyone.
Yeah, she's just she
screws up.
Yeah, she screws up. She's able to go into battle and train with all the guys and everything. And it seems like the military is not separated by sexes in this. It's just straight up like all restrooms and everything, locker rooms and everything are all, it's like Starship Troopers where you're in the military, there ain't no
doing
sex
my
anymore.
part.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing your part. And so the first mission, of course, is the jumping into the Amazon because now there's a war, the Amazon War, they call it, between us, the U.S. and Fat Boy Burger.
The Burger Company. And I love that the Burger Company
they have like a Bob's Big Boy machine that like walks around the forest shooting people. It's like an AT-AT or something, but it's a Bob's Big Boy or a Bob's Fat Boy or whatever, and it just walks around. And it even has like a burger.
Yeah,
and
it's burger themed weapons. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. So she comes in, and I like that she's not like invincible or something. She gets hit by a shell as she's coming in, as she's parachuting down, and disorients her. And what this was a cool thing. I was like, they should really have these. There's like her parachute, gets hit by this flak or whatever. So she starts to fall, but they also have these like bubbles that like expand around them, and apparently they can block you from like super high heights of falling, and also like artillery shelling and stuff. It'll bounce off of that. So that's kind of a cool thing. So she gets in that and she ends up surviving the fall, and then immediately is under extreme fire from the Fat Burger Boy or whatever. And one thing that was interesting is she gets into this skirmish, and their leader is, what's his name? Moretti. Lieutenant Moretti. And this guy ends up being like the big bad throughout the series, but she and him end up being like the only survivors of this area. And he tells her, like, Washington, they're releasing gas. You got to go save those men. Give them gas masks. And so she goes and, he tells another guy, because he's like, oh, you're a strong man. Here, do this. And she's like, fuck that. I'll do it. And she grabs the masks and just takes off. And we see, it's called condiment gas, I think.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be like mustard gas.
It definitely is supposed to be mustard gas because it's yellow.
Yeah, it's like yellow, and it fills up, and it basically just melts the skin off everybody's faces and stuff. She's able to get a mask on one guy who I think lives, but she's not able to get a mask on anybody before they die, but she puts hers on, and she still gets burned though on her arms and legs. So she ends up being put in I guess like a infirmary, and is going through a little bit of trauma. Before she gets saved by the people, she goes into the forest after watching this horrific scene of violence where this mustard gas is burning everybody, and she actually like sits down and cries. And I thought that was a very like real thing. Like, you just went through this trauma, and this battle is over, and now I have to fucking go decompress.
No, it was powerful,
and it's not what she thought. But then she's not defeated. She stops crying. And one thing I like is you can see the yellow like in her tears and on her face, because it's like mixing with her sweat. I think it's like a powder or something that must fall on you that reacts. And she she's like, this won't kill me. I won't die here. And like, she very much is determined that, no, this ain't gonna, I'm gonna be stronger from this. I'm not gonna give in and give up. So at the infirmary, that's what she pretty much decides. She actually gets to send her mom a letter, which is unique, apparently. That they say like, oh yeah, we don't always get to send letters. They don't really want us sending letters to America, which is interesting. You would think, I'm assuming they're censored for the most part too.
Yeah.
But then after this moment is when she kind of becomes the badass soldier, because she has decided this isn't going to break her. She's going to break them. So she goes into like hardcore fighting mode. As she gets put out, and it's kind of like Vietnam or something. Like if you were a Vietnam vet, or not a vet, but you first get to Vietnam, you think war is something, then you experience what war really is. Then it either breaks you or it hardens you. Yeah. And for some people, that means it hardens them and they go bad, like Lieutenant Moretti. There you go. And then, or it's like her, where she's still a good person. It just makes her like a really good soldier.
Yeah, like she's not John Rambo, but she's definitely like becomes a badass.
Yeah, and so she's going around, she's shooting people and stuff, and as she's doing her job, saving her friends in the middle of this firefight, also taking out like the Bob's Big Boy, tanks or what, AT-AT machines or whatever. She hears gunshots after that like is done, after like the noise is settled, and it turns out that Lieutenant Moretti is being paid by the Bob's Big Boy people, and he's killing all the soldiers that are in this area now that were victorious, but he's going through and killing them, and he shoots her. And I like that she takes her licks in this book. She gets shot a lot. He shoots her 3 times in the torso. No like kill shots, but good enough to put her down. And
someone even says like we should confirm the kill, and he's like, we don't have time.
Yeah, we don't have time. And he's like underestimating Martha at this time. Like at this moment, he's thinking like, she's a good soldier, but she ain't anything special or anything. And as he's walking, I guess he goes to like confirm that she's dead, and she is not dead. She has pulled herself up behind a tree. She's hiding, and she takes out her bayonet. And as he walks up just in front of the tree, she swings around and stabs him in the chest, and then proceeds to murder all the other soldiers that are on his like evil platoon that are, being paid by the corporation. People. Yeah. So she stabs him. He ends up living, and so does she, because the other soldiers find her. I guess other soldiers came to help the recovery because they don't hear any radios from them or anything. So she's saved, Moretti's saved, and they're in the hospital, and Moretti visits her and says, hey, like, you aren't going to tell anybody about what happened. And, I'm going to make sure that...
Like, you're going to be a hero, but I'm also going to be a hero out of this.
Yeah, I don't remember how he says, like why he blackmails her or something.
Well, they're not going to believe you. You're
that's
black.
What it is. Yeah, you're black and poor, and I'm not, and you're just, you're just a recruit. I am like a lieutenant and an officer.
Well, she actually does get promoted to sergeant after like 6 months, but still,
that's not an officer.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so I mean, like she's still in like what's that called?
A grunt, basically.
Well, yeah, but a sergeant is non-commissioned officer.
Yeah,
yeah. So she's not the same rank. He's a higher rank. So, and this kind of just reminds her of that moment where she was being chased by thunderballs as a child when he's about to kidnap her, and she drops her Raggedy Ann doll, and that's like the end of issue 2, where she's just thinking about that trauma that happened. And one thing I like about this is she does go back to those moments in her mind that were traumatic, but it seems like they kind of strengthen her.
Yeah,
like she uses them to empower her rather than feel like like victimize her, I guess you could say. And another thing that is a common motif that actually appears, and I liked this a lot. Sometimes when she's trapped in like a situation, there will just be a page of a panther, like about to like kill someone or run or whatever, and it's just like that. They, instead of drawing her, they're like, we're making her, that's her like spirit animal or something, like that's what she actually is in strength. So issue 2 starts with a very funny like commercial kind of thing for this store called Behemoth. And the commercial's like, don't worry about radiated fruits. It's fine. And then we see in the background, like pregnant women with their babies are holding giant apples that are like 3 times the size of their babies. And they're like, it's great for you. And so we see like they're gonna, like this one lady's holding a big sausage and she goes, now that's a hot dog. And
I mean, it has to, I mean, it's like, looks like a log from a tree. Basically.
yeah. It's
so big.
It's gigantic. So, and then as it zooms out, we see the Behemoth store, which is like Costco or something, right? And
yeah,
it's got a smokestack or a steam stack for a nuclear power plant. So I guess it's just irradiating things and making them bigger. And I really like that these like commercials are kind of parodies of things that we actually have. I don't know if Costco or Sam's Club was around back then, but it just seemed like, yeah, like this, maybe he just predicted, like it makes sense there would be these giant stores that this time had giant food, but it's like Costco where they just have many things instead of one giant thing. So anyway, Martha Washington is now still in the military. She's recovered. Her Lieutenant Moretti is moving up. He's probably higher than a lieutenant now. Yeah. But because of their interaction, he's got a thing for her. Like every mission that's dangerous or could possibly kill her, he's like, Washington, you're on it. She's my number one guy, but it's actually because he wants her to like die and go away. So the wars continue. We see that she's on like a suicide mission on like a 1-person helicopter as she's taking down another fat boy AT-AT. And we see that in her intercom, he's like, that's right, you got to do this. And Moretti is just sitting in like a lawn chair, sunning himself far away from the action now. So it's definitely, the leaders are not in the front lines, but she is. And yeah, we get to see her. She's being more and more of a badass as she's trained more and more in the military and gotten more experience on the battlefield. So while this war is still raging on in the Amazon, we also get some really interesting extremist groups that are also attacking the White House and such. And one of them is called the Aryan Thrust, which is made up of white gay men who want to overthrow the government. And they all dress like, I don't know, leather daddies or something, and Judas Priest,
but with Nazi armbands.
Yeah, they all have Nazi. Well, that's a given. Yeah, you got to have Nazi armbands. And so they're trying to assassinate the president. There's also a crazy guy who's the Surgeon General, who apparently is like literally his own branch of war government or something. Like he's leading a lot of. He's got like his own FBI or something, that like his own branch that he controls, and he is fucking insane. And this is where you get like, he's like, the health services will be there shortly, and then you see like they're all militarized and they're taking over areas of the cities, and he declares a war on sickness or disease or something. And so yeah, it's very interesting, the idea of war on disease. We're gonna police state these areas that are ridden with disease, but we're saving them. It's all for their good, their own good. We know what's good for them. And yeah, so he's kind of like a background bad guy that's going on.
Sex scandals are rocking the Vatican.
Yeah. Oh, that was in 1990.
Yeah,
Once again, predicted.
So crazy.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we're seeing lots of things happening, but the main thing that happens is one of the satellites in the sky has been taken over by the Aryan Thrust, and Raggy Ann, or the girl that she found that was like psychic in that testing facility, she has been moved into this space area, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and so they don't really say how or why, but it's 2011 now, I should say. So she's 15, I believe, right? That's right. 16?
15, 16.
Yeah, around there. I don't know. I can't do math. 1995. Yeah, 16. Yeah, 16. She's 16. Oh man. Anyway, I've been out of high school for a long time, folks. Anyway,
we got calculators now.
Yeah. Google. What? Hey Google. How many years is this?
Take that, math teacher. You told me I wouldn't have a calculator with me all the time.
Yeah,
it's on my phone.
You were fucking wrong, stupid. Anyway, so they send, I guess it's, I don't know, Colonel Moretti now, but whatever he is, he's like, oh, I got just the person for this mission to go to space and take on the Aryan thrust that's taken over the satellite. So he sends Martha there, and he doesn't know that Raggy Ann is there. And I guess part of this satellite, it's like these kids are, like each one of these like psychic kids was hooked in to different satellites, the lasers, and that's what they're training them for. Like they're experimenting on them so that they can control the laser with their minds, I guess, and they'll also follow directions. Maybe like making the satellite sentient, but without making it an AI or a computer. It's like maybe we'll have more control over a human that we can, torture or whatever. But they're psychic kids. So they send Martha there, and it's a very phallic satellite. I'll say that. It's perfect for the Aryan thrust because it looks like a giant penis, and they've taken it over.
And I love that the leader is Colonel William Crotch.
Yeah, that's
Wilhelm Crotch. Pardon.
Yeah, I think that's probably not his given name. It's his taken name. He's taken that name. So she meets as like it's like an undercover mission because she's like, I'm here to negotiate, and they take her weapon, but she also has a saber on her because she's like been promoted, and that's part of her dress uniform. And he's like, oh, you know what? We got to take your saber too. And she's like, no, you're not. And they're like, if you don't, we'll shoot you. And she's like, you can't shoot on this spacecraft. If you shoot, we will all be sucked into space right now, and you'll die. Personally, I don't give a fuck. Either way, you're dead, and that's all I cared about. So, so she takes her saber and begins stabbing into these people, killing them, and they can't really do anything because, like she said, they can't shoot. They do end up shooting at her. One of the dumb guys does, and luckily she went inside of like a room that had an emergency door that comes down when the air oxygen.
Yeah, it's one of those like protocols. So
like a safety door. If the hull is breached, that's what I meant to say. It automatically closes, so she's safe as that area decompresses and vents out into space, and all the guys die. And then she's been getting like mental messages as she's been going there, and we see that it's actually Raggy Ann is the one that's inside of this specific laser, and she cuts her free and saves Raggy Ann.
And they get out of there just in time before the whole thing explodes.
Yeah, and I don't know if cutting her free or something triggered. I think what happened was Moretti like triggered they're dead now. Okay, cool. We're just gonna explode everything, and he wanted to kill Martha. So that was the plan. She gets away though. She seems to always survive. And then as she's coming in, from orbit, she's on her space shuttle, which is, I don't know how big it is, but it looks like it's maybe like a 1 or 2 person spacecraft, but it looks like our shuttles from the 80s and 90s. Like, I guess there was called shuttles.
Smaller,
right? I don't know
shuttle.
what the fuck they're called.
No, it would be a shuttle.
Okay. And so, it looks smaller, but it looks similar to that. And she crash lands in the middle of the Apache lands, just happens to. Like, it's kind of happenstance. And it turns out that American forces are not allowed to breach that line. So they do, but they get shot down by the Apaches the second they cross the line. And then Martha and Raggy Ann are taken prisoner, I guess, by the Apache leader.
So they capture her. One thing I thought was cool is they kind of like, the Apache Nation's been kind of quiet on the side here, and found out that the land that they were given and the refinery and whatnot was crap, and it basically all of the area was poisoned, and so all of the
but not on purpose though. It's like they gave them the refinery, and it turned out that the refinery, is bad for your lungs. It's putting out black oil.
I thought that's why they gave it to him.
No, I think they just gave them that, and then what ended up happening, which is kind of funny. So they gave him this oil refinery, and the Native Americans, they call them Indians in this, but the Native Americans were saying, like, or they were like, oh, sweet, like now we'll be able to be self-sufficient. We can sell this oil to other areas. But then North America basically becomes solar and don't need oil anymore. So it ends up fucking them over, and now they just have a refinery that's in disrepair, that's not really making them that much money, and it's also polluting their air and water and everything that they had on their land. And the smoke from this is, everybody's breathing it in. Everybody's got a cough in the Apache area. And also their skin has turned like pale and white-ish or whatever. It's like looks sickly, and the people are going around and like rubbing a red dirt or paint on their skin daily in order to try to maintain their skin color, which is super fucked up. It's like one of the more poignant sections of this. But yeah. I like that you were going to point that out.
Yeah, that's where I was feeling it. It was very moving. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and so we learn about them a bit. We kind of focus with the Native Americans. They're not. They still have Martha and Raggy Ann, but they're not like hurting him or anything. They just have him captured, and it seems like they're trying to bargain and say like, hey, we want this or that. But unfortunately, no one really gives a fuck about Martha. She is a soldier, and she is able to be killed, and no one cares. So that is like by definition the part of being a soldier is if you die, you are a casualty of war, and you are a number on a list. You know, like at that point. So, but the Native American that's like the leader that captured her, he seems to be kind of infatuated with her strength and just her in general. One thing I like about like now that she's been badass, and I didn't say this in the last issue, but once she becomes more badass and she's fighting, her hairstyle changes and she looks like Wesley Snipes from Demolition Man.
Well, and I was wondering because when it had the mustard gas, it looked like
if it turned her hair,
because it looked like there was a little bit in her hair that was yellow.
Maybe that's what happened. I didn't put two and two together. There was some in her hair. It looked like that, but I just thought she dyed her hair yellow. But no, that makes perfect sense. That's like a mark of being in that specific war or that confrontation would be, I have yellow hair now because I was, mustard gas was used on me. So that's interesting. I didn't think of it. That's a good catch, John. That's why we keep you around. So and also in the background, we're seeing that the president has gone from his like, I'm a good guy to on TV. He's like, I'm a good guy, but he's also super drunk all the time in the background. And he's definitely people are getting him to sign executive orders when he's drunk, and they're using his wife and mistresses and stuff to always make him drunk. So whenever he's with his wife or his mistress, they're like, why don't you take a drink? Take a load off. You need to relax. You're the president. You got so much on your plate. And then he'll get drunk, and then lieutenant, or it's not lieutenant anymore, whatever, Colonel Moretti comes in and says, why don't you sign this executive order? He's like, yeah, whatever. And he signs it. And then it's like, oh, it's an executive order to murder everybody. So that happens. And basically, Moretti wants him to sign an executive order for the Apaches. And so he comes in one night, and once again, the president has been given a bunch of alcohol, but his vice president is there as well. And Moretti didn't know that the vice president was going to be there. And he says, hey, president, you should totally sign this executive order. The Apache Nation is going to kill one of our soldiers. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Like, you should totally sign this order that will let us just shoot them with a laser cannon and destroy all of them at once. And the president doesn't really want to do it necessarily, but he's so drunk, he doesn't really care, or, he's just out of it. And the vice president is like, this is a bad idea. You should not do this. And somehow it's like the president gets mad at the vice president for saying something about like him drinking too much and you shouldn't do this while you're drunk. And also Moretti's kind of pushing the president. He's like, hey, no, you're fine. You should drink. This guy's kind of crazy. He's trying to control you. And then the president takes that information and like decides, yeah, this guy is trying to control me. And he breaks his bottle and he stabs the vice president in the neck and kills him. And the president is left with bloody hands on the floor. And Moretti says, hey, sign this now. You've chosen your side, basically. Sign this fucking thing. And so the president signs it. He's still drunk. He still wakes up in the morning like, what did I do? And he doesn't know exactly what happened that night. But what he signs is a genocidal kill order to wipe out the entire Apache Nation, and including Martha and everybody. He's like, yeah, soldier, whatever. She's dead too. And then also the way that they get away with this and like spin it to the public is they say that an Apache assassin came in and killed the vice president, and that's their like precursor to being able to just do this attack willy-nilly. So Martha's in the village, And Raggy Ann, being psychic, apparently has formed some kind of psychic bond with Moretti. She's starting to get his thoughts in her mind, and she starts saying, like, gonna kill them all, gonna bomb the whole nation, gotta get rid of those Redskins, or what, like stuff like that. And this, of course, alerts Martha that this attack is coming and inbound. So she decides she has to break out. She has to get out of here. And so she does. She breaks out. She is caught by some native people that are like on patrol, but she's trying to say, like, let go. They're going to attack. They're going to kill. And she ends up having to shoot one of them dead in order to get out. So she steals a Jeep, and the guy that was chasing her down, who is the leader of the Apaches, he jumps on a horse and he starts chasing her. And before they know it, he thinks he's trying to, like, bring her back to where they had her captured. But before he knows it, a laser shoots and it blows up the entire Apache Nation, like the whole refinery, which is where they were all, like, the town built around it. Yeah. And so that is completely gone. They pretty much just completed, like, a whole genocide in 1 second for all the Apache peoples. And they also think that they killed Martha. Like, Moretti's like, yes, I finally got her. I've been trying to kill her for so long. So they send her mom, like, a report that says, oh, your daughter died in service, and, she's a great person or whatever. And the mom is like, no, I don't believe it. I knew the instant my older son died, and, like, they told me, and I knew it was true. Now, Martha's not dead. I'm not accepting this. And so one thing that happens after that is, like, Moretti begins to build, like, a police force kind of thing. Or I guess he gets the president to sign more and more bills, because now he has he has something over the president's head, right? He has the murder of the vice president. And so he's been asking the president to sign more and more executive orders. And one of them is to build a new branch of a military force that is of course shown off in Meat Rack, which is super buff, extra big, like, genetically engineered lady military police. So he's got his own force of just super hot, buxom blonde women that they're, like, buxom but also very, very muscular, and they're super tall. Like, they seem very formidable, or they're supposed to be very formidable, because later on when Martha's fighting them and stuff, they're like, I'm gonna rip your head off, and, like, it seems like they could do that if they wanted to, because they've been genetically engineered. So in the meantime, they do find Martha at the site, but, like, where the laser beam hit the Apache land. So they know she's alive. They have her in one of these mental facilities again.
But she looked directly, I guess, at, like, the laser blast.
She's blind right now.
She's blind. She can't see anything. So when people, when they come for her, she didn't see it coming.
Yeah. And so also in the background, we have the leader of the Apaches. He was apparently just left there, and he has figured out, he went on, like, a spirit journey with his dead elders, where he, smoked some peyote and decides he's going to go free Martha Washington. She's going to help him get revenge on the government for his people. And so he dresses up. He's got this, like, cool little orb that he calls Cochise, but it's kind of like, you've never read Booster Gold, but in Booster Gold, he's got a little robot that flies around called Skeets, and it's like that. It's like a Google that flies around. It's like Mr. Terrific Spheres or whatever.
Okay, that's why I was thinking Mr. Terrific Spheres. So
yeah, similar concept. So, so yeah, he decides, I'm going to go save Martha Washington and break her out of this place. He also has Raggy Man with him, and that's how he's done this. Like, he knows what's going on and stuff.
And since Raggy and it has that connection too, that's going to help them find her.
Yeah, that helps them find her, and that also helps because Martha has been faking, I guess, being not faking. She's been in and out of this drugged state from the mental facility, and every time she's not in the drugged state, she knows exactly what's going on. But they keep tranquilizing her, and she's done, like, many escape trials, but she's blind, so she can't. Every time she, like, fights and stabs someone or whatever, she doesn't know where else to go because she's in this facility that she doesn't know, and so they end up capturing her again. And it turns out that the Surgeon General is the one who's head over this facility.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so I guess he decides it's going to be a good idea to experiment on her a bit, and he gives her a pair of like robot eyes after experimenting with her body. He has her like hooked up and hanging with like wires and shit, and he has her in this machine that's like a big organ, and as he plays music, it deprograms her. So she's been fighting their tranquilizing, and now he's like, I'm going to brainwash her, I'm going to give her new eyes, and she's going to be one of these women on my police force. Specifically, I guess the doctor, it's not Moretti who uses them, but I mean, he can direct them if he wants.
Yeah.
But the Surgeon General is the one who has made these buxom lady security force that he's made. And so we see Martha is being brainwashed for real. The organ is making her forget everything she knew and remembered from her childhood and past. And we're getting flashes of those moments that we've seen throughout the comic. And yeah, they give her new eyes. And then she's pretty much just given straight, here's a uniform. You're fitting in. You're one of the nurse guards at this mental facility. So while that's going on, we see there is finally a coup against the president. And that coup is led by Moretti. He gets the entire cabinet in the Oval Office with the president. And I can't remember why the president doesn't want to do something for Moretti, right?
Basically, yeah. So there's like growing sentiment, like in general, with the populace now too.
Yeah.
To bring back Rexel, who is still in a coma technically, as far as they know at this point.
But he's not dead.
Yeah.
He's not dead, so he never, got outvoted or anything.
Yeah.
This guy just took over for him. So they don't know. But yeah, like they don't know what's going on with Rexel exactly. But this guy is down in the polls. They say he's got like a 2% favor rating or whatever with the public. And there's like I said, his administration, when initially at least it seemed he had good intentions, has just increased the militarization, the size of the government, everything about controlling the populace, and it's fomented hate and anger with his administration. So his cabinet is in the room with him, along with Moretti, who's like some kind of advisor, I'm assuming, for the military. And I guess Moretti has decided that it's time for him to die. So he plans a coup with the rest of the cabinet, and they all take knives and they take turns stabbing the president to death. And they do that. And then Moretti takes over saying, I'm going to take over presidency just temporarily until we could do a real election. They stab him. And then Moretti's like, all right, guys, I got to go. And then he leaves, and the White House blows up with everybody else in there. So he gets rid of all the other people that could have ratted him out.
Oh, man, again, all of the people.
What are the chances that the White House blows up 2 years in a row, or like within 2 years? Like it gets rebuilt, and then 2 years later it blows up.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But so Moretti, survives because that was his plan. But now he is in control of the government. He has said like, oh, I'm the next in line. I knew what was going on. I don't know if he's actually the next in line or he just says like, I'm going to take over. These guys don't know what they're doing. But don't worry, I'm only taking over temporarily. I will have an election when we can. When it comes out, like when it's time to do the election, we'll do an election.
Yeah, because that's the thing I don't know is because now this is one of the best parts is we learn that the Surgeon General has been keeping Rexel alive. He took Rexel's brain and put it in like a little robot.
Like a Wall-E robot or something. Yeah. and also, this is where, like originally when Rexel would talk, it just seemed like a scummy president or whatever, like a scummy politician. But now when he's talking, he very much feels like Ronald Reagan. He's like, well, I think these guys are just good chaps. And like, he's a very unassuming, nice version of Reagan or whatever, and that they would always talk about on, SNL and stuff.
Would you like a jelly bean?
Would you like a jelly bean? He's like that fake version of Reagan, I guess you could say. So he is in this. He goes to the same facility that the Surgeon General was at with Martha, who is now part of the crew, like the guards. And in the meantime, we see that the Native American man. Does he have a name?
So they say his name a little later. I feel like we didn't get it at first. And is it Wasserston?
Oh, yeah, that's a joke later on where she's like, I don't even know your name. And he says, my last name's Wasserstein. And she's like, that doesn't sound very Native American. He's like, your name doesn't sound very African.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of like a little joke of like, oh, they're both like people taken from their lands. And then
okay, so it was given name. Okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming, or someone in his family that he ended up taking the name was white. And so, yeah, it's just like, like a joke between native peoples who have been fucked over by white people.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yes.
So he's breaking in. I think they said his name was like Feather something, like that was his native name, but we don't know his actual name, I guess.
Oh yes, okay, that's right. They did say the name really early on. It was Red Feather.
Red Feather. So they never really like say it throughout the series, though. It's just once they said it at the beginning and then like never mention it again. So yeah, his name is Red Feather. He has Raggy Ann with him on his back, like in a little papoose, and he's climbing up the walls of this facility trying to find Martha. And Raggy Ann is telekinetically talking to her, trying to get exactly where she's at. But Martha has been brainwashed. She doesn't quite understand what's going on. And when he finds her, she actually, is dressed in police uniform because they're like, or in like full guard uniform, because they're like, all hands,
health service uniform.
Health service uniform. Because they're like, all hands on deck. We need everybody with their guns, and someone's breaking in the facility. And she comes upon Red Feather, and she sees him and just takes him out. She shoots him. He's like, "Oh my God, Martha, hey!" And she's like, "Boom!" And then, and she shoots him, and she doesn't really remember him at all. But then Raggy Ann grabs her hand as she walks up to Red Feather to like kill him permanently, like shoot him in the head. And Raggy Ann is able to like get into her mind and remind her who she is.
Upload.
Yeah, and yeah. So then we see that right now there's a bunch of different things happening politically at this exact moment.
Yeah.
So at this moment, Rexel is in the room with, or in that building with them with the Surgeon General. The Surgeon General has said, "I have the actual president. He is alive. Like he is right here, and we're protecting him. And he is a brain, but he's still alive. It doesn't matter. He was never unelected, so he's still the actual president.
Yeah.
He does this because Moretti has said, 'I am the president,' and everybody's like, 'No, we don't like that.' And then because Moretti has said that, and no one voted for him, and there was all this civil unrest, the United States has split into different countries with different groups and different, we'll say, extremist organizations taking different parts of the country. So one of them is they call them a fascist, feminist, authoritarian state or something, and they take the South, and then there's like
I wrote down because I just thought some of them were really funny. So there's the New England Federation of States, the East Coast Capitalist Dictatorship,
which is New York. Like some guy just took over New York.
The First Sex Confederacy, and it's like a female-led Southern.
Yes, but they're like the feminist ones.
Yeah. Florida. Just Florida on its own.
No, Florida's taken over by Cuba. It's annexed by Cuba.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Lone Star Republic, because hell yeah,
Texas.
Texas on its own. The Mexican territory, the quote unquote real America, Wonderland, which is basically like
Oregon, right?
No, Wonderland is like kind of like
Las Vegas. I think that's what it was supposed to be. Yeah.
And then God's country, which is like Oregon, Idaho, all that area.
All that's one big state now. So yeah, they splintered off like immediately, like almost like this had been growing and they were ready for this moment whenever it happened. And Moretti is on a satellite above Earth, so he's not really caring about what's going on with America and everything right now. But the Surgeon General now saying that, I guess it comes out, once they reveal that Rexel is still alive, like all of a sudden the populace that is even in these territories that are in the process of being taken over by these extremist groups are like, no, we like Rexel, Rexel all the way. And like we said, Rexel seems to be, as he's a brain in a machine now, he seems to be very like, well, I think it's all okay, like I'll be fine. And he's very much like less threatening than he was before. We'll say that. And so the Surgeon General launches nukes at the satellite that Moretti is on. And in retaliation, Moretti sends the military planes and the Peace Corps into wherever I guess they're in the Amazon. Is that where they're at? Or no, they're in some area. That's right. They're in some area wherever this like facility is that the mental institution is. So he sends bombers in to bomb that place. Also, we see that even though Red Feather got shot in the abdomen with a shotgun at point blank range, He's fine. The medicine they have there was able to save his life.
That, and then there's like this. They put this like robotic kind of like chess piece thing on him.
Yeah. So while these rockets are about to, they're getting closer and closer to the satellite Moretti's on, the bombings are happening. Martha is now woken up from her sleep,
her
right? Or her brainwashing. There you go. So she's pissed off.
Remember.
But no one knows that she's woken up. So
Yeah.
she's still pretending to be brainwashed as she walks into the room where Rexel is and the Surgeon General, who's making crazy demands and saying, we're going to take over the world and all this shit. And she takes that shotgun and she shoots him in the fucking chest. And we find out that the Surgeon General is some sort of AI robot, which makes sense because he's crazy and weird and he talks like ChatGPT or something. So they begin fighting. She shoots him in the chest, but he's still not dead 100% because he's a machine. And then they don't really make this clear, but somehow the nuclear bombs don't detonate. They just like stop detonating. They don't do anything.
Yeah, it looks like some of them explode, but they don't reach the satellite. They don't reach their target.
Yeah, so Moretti's not killed, and it seems like Moretti is not. He's losing control. Like the military personnel that are with him on the satellite are like, "What are you doing? Like we don't want to kill all these people and stuff." And he's like, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah. Plus, did you see our actual president's still alive?
Yeah. Yeah. Now that they've seen Rexel, they're like, "Oh, we got a president. You're not president anymore." He's like, "No, I am fucking president." So he starts kind of assaulting the other military people, saying like, anybody else going to question me? I'm the president. He's freaking out. So the bombing begins to happen at the facility that Martha and everybody are at. And so she takes Rexel and Red Feather and Raggy Ann and Rexel's wife, who's I guess supposed to be like, what's her name?
Nancy Reagan.
Nancy Reagan. There you go. And they jump down a tunnel that just happens to lead to like a hangar where they take a jet and they get out and they escape.
Just in time.
Just in time. The Surgeon General does follow them down, even though he's like wounded, like robot body is wounded. Kind of like, he reminds me of like one of the robots in Alien where you can wound them, but they're still alive. There's just milk spilling out everywhere.
Yes, that's exactly. That's perfect.
Yeah. So like he's still alive and he's got like claws on his fingers that popped out when she started to attack him. And so he chases down this plane and grabs onto it as it takes off. And the Peace Force show up and they parachute in and they say, "Oh, a jet took off. Rexel's not here. What do you want to do, Moretti?" And Moretti says, "Shoot that fucking plane down." So the plane is in stealth mode, so they can't really see it. But the jet that's following it sees the heat signature and it says, "Okay, there it is." So Martha says like, "Oh, there's a lock on us. Turn the engines off." They turn the engines off, and they do some maneuver where, the doctor, the Surgeon General, is on the outside of the plane, and she sees him and shoots him with the shotgun through the glass, and that makes him fly off the plane. And so, because their engines are off and cooled, and he is like a robot, and I'm assuming leaking hot fluid or whatever.
He's the only heat signal.
Yeah, the missiles that were launched target him and blow him up, so they escape. And then they fly all the way to the Amazon in that plane because she knows that there's some I guess she assumes he's playing by some rules because he's bound as the president the sitting president to like abide by some of the rules that have been signed into law. And one of those rules was the Amazon that has now been grown back to almost, or even more, I think, full glory, is untouchable. No one can launch anything in there for fear of, causing another killing of the plant life and everything there. So she's like, we're going here because I can fight him and he can't kill us with bombs or lasers or any of that shit. He's got to come one-on-one. And so he does. He comes one-on-one with a kill team. She sets up a bunch of booby traps. They get into it.
I love this. This basically became Predator here at the end.
Predator or Rambo.
Yes.
Yeah, it's literally, Rambo when he sets all the traps for the police officers that are chasing him in the forest, and or the end of Predator when Arnold sets all those traps for the Predator. It's pretty much that. Like she uses the frogs of the Amazon for their poison on their backs and throws fucking arrows and shit and spears at the people. And they also found in the doctor's med bag that they had like all these like sterile instruments that are sharp and useful as knives and stuff. So
Yeah.
they like tied those to sticks and they're using them as weapons. And Red Feather is also, fighting them as well. Oh, there was one moment when they're preparing for the soldiers coming that, so Raggy Ann can read minds and she's like sitting, trying to sleep, it seems. And Martha's like, oh man, my shoulder's really stiff. And Red Feather's like, oh, let me rub that out for you. And it seems like, oh, they're getting kind of close. We've already seen that Red Feather has some kind of attraction to her. And Raggy Ann is reading both of their minds, and he's trying to make conversation, and Raggy Ann's saying like, oh, how's it going? Oh no, that's stupid. I can't say that. So how are you? No, I can't say that. Like whatever's going through his mind at his smooth approach to try to start a conversation with her.
Yeah.
And then it's just funny, like the little mind reading that Raggy Ann does. I thought it was cute and funny for a scene right before we're gonna have like this crazy murder and mayhem going on. So Martha, she gets wounded, but she is taking on all these officers. Red Feather does get shot in the gut as well, and it looks like they might be losing. In fact, Rexel is there at the campsite with Raggy Ann, and his wife is holding on to him, and they just walk up to her and shoot Nancy, I guess, in the head.
Yeah.
I don't know what Pepper. Her name's Pepper in this. They just shoot her in the head, and they try to shoot Rexel, but his little robot body is apparently anti-bullet or whatever. Like
bulletproof,
bulletproof. It just bounces. Thank you, John. It just bounces
anti-bullet.
off. Yeah, it just bounces off. But it seems like Martha's losing, but she's able to get a grenade, and she throws it in the midst of all of these, all the rest of the soldiers. There's 5 left. I think like 12 came, including Moretti. And then what's left is 5 plus Moretti. She throws a grenade, kills the other 5. And then as Moretti finds her like damage from the grenade and other shots she's taken through this fight, he's like, oh, fuck yeah. He's full health and he's got a gun. So he walks up to her and he takes aim. And as he's about to shoot her, one of my favorite panels in this, we cut to her being like a panther again. She looks like a panther. She's jumping at him like he's a hunter. And we see him as a hunter shooting with a hunting rifle, and it wings her shoulder or something like that. So he shoots her in the body again. Oh, no, it misses her shoulder. And then as she jumps on him and pounces, she gets another shot off, and it's in her abdomen. And that goes through her, but it doesn't seem like it's fatal. So they begin fighting, and like I said, she's wounded, but she's still like taking him on pretty good. And she goes full ham on him. And then I guess because she's a good person, she's like, I'm not going to kill you here. You're under arrest.
You're under arrest.
Yeah. And then we get the year 2012, the year of Rexel's re-election. And it turns out that Rexel has been re-elected. All those states didn't last, and they all, like all those extremist states, end up voting for Rexel to be president again. And yeah.
And it's just, they have his little, basically the little Wally robot is on top of a robot body now that they put it on.
Yeah, they give him like little arms, and like it looks like a Capsule Corp Dragon Ball Z robot body.
Yes.
It's very funny. I thought it was awesome design for this robot. And we see like now instead of police, he's got like, it looks like maybe like National Guard or something around him.
Yeah.
So there's always the same shot, but with different guards, different police force. Different military.
Yeah, they
him.
look. Yeah, they look less.
They look
tacky.
less. They look less.
It's still.
Yeah, I mean, it's still guards and shit. So, and then this is probably the best ending of a comic that I've read for a while. Martha, who is now like a war hero and saved. She's very well known.
She saved the president.
Yeah, everybody knows that. Finally, Martha gets the accolades she deserves because Moretti was taking all the credit for everything that she was doing because he was the one who set up the mission, and then he'd be like, Martha, go do that. And then she would do that and she wouldn't die. And he'd be like, well, either way, I'm moving up because this is looking good for me. And so Moretti is in prison. He's on death row. He's about to be executed for his crimes. And she shows up in uniform and she says, hey, how's it going? I thought I'd stop by now that you're going to die tonight. I don't know I guess he's going to die from firing squad, she says. And she said she like brings up another person that she knew who got killed in prison when she was a little kid, who ended up being electrocuted. And they say that he, hung himself with a belt. And I guess she had visited him the night he was going to die, and he had asked for her belt, and she didn't know why he needed it. But then it turned out that he killed himself. And so she takes off her belt and leaves it for him to kill himself with.
But he says, "No, don't leave. I don't want to be alone when I do it."
Yeah. So she sits down and watches him hang himself, and he's left hanging in front of her, and she just stares like, "Fuck you." You know, like she watches it stone faced.
Yeah, she says she listens to his death rattle.
Yeah, it takes 10 minutes for him to fully die in front of her, and she just sits and watches it, nice and peaceful. And that's the end of this. That's the end of this four issue arc of the first series of Martha Washington. So, John, what'd you think? What would you give it?
I mean, it was way more intense and crazier than I expected this to be.
Yeah.
I like that she wasn't a badass from the start. Like,
yeah, she grows.
She had the couple, like the little nuances and the little extra. You know, she got to have a little.
Yeah, like tech hacking and stuff. Yeah.
But I love that. Yeah, she went through real human emotions, real human trauma, overcame them. Like was denied her denied being a woman, denied being black.
Yeah.
And then both of those things were able to come up, and she was able to own them, use them to her strengths. This is a fantastic, strong female character.
Yeah, I don't know why no one ever talks about her.
This is fantastic. And then she just becomes more and more like she gets hurt. She has, she stumbles throughout this, but she fucking learns from her mistakes.
Yeah, picks herself up, moves forward.
Yeah, moves forward, becomes more badass, becomes the hero that like she basically has been from the beginning of this, but was denied. Yeah. And then
it's finally proven to the world, at that point.
Yeah, and then at the end, she's like, she gets the fucking like. I have some sort of like, satisfaction, I guess, for her is like gets to watch the person that basically tried to ruin her entire life die in front of her and like take a little bit of like solace and like,
it's like closure.
It's
a nice bow on top of this.
And the fact like she came full circle even with like the shitty president that Rexel was throughout a lot of this, it was still kept a lot of like kind of like order and civility to some things.
Yeah, it's weird. That's why like I can never understand or like fully pinpoint what Miller's going to do, because he doesn't just ride with his own politics. He goes with like the interesting idea of like, yeah, you can be like a fascist, weird like corporatist president, but then you might be better. That might be better than this other guy who seems good at first. But also pushes wars and grows the military state and stuff.
And she says something about that too when they go to the Amazon. She's like, man, like Nissen was shitty too, but he did like bring back this beautiful Amazon, like how important that is to like the world. So it was really interesting. It laid on all sides of everything.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
It just gives you something to think about.
Yeah. And then every little thing that's like,
there's a lot of similarities in this crazy book that I'm reading right now.
It was a lot of fun. I actually read a little bit further on this one.
Oh yeah,
and I will definitely finish this.
Yeah, I went out and I bought all the issues I could find. I ordered a bunch on eBay this morning, and then I just happened to find the first 2 issues of this series on at Half Price Books this week. So
hell yeah,
it was a coincidence.
You never know. Yeah. All the coincidences.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. The art was fantastic.
Oh yeah, Dave Gibbons. You can't beat Dave Gibbons. He's great.
And I never like there was there was 1 or 2 moments where it's like, wait a minute, what happened? How did that work out?
I'd say that's the only thing. Like the craziness of it leads you to sometimes be like, wait, what exactly?
What just happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like it was a pretty, I won't say straightforward. It was
solid
a
story.
Very solid story. And the high moments that were badass, and then when it was like dark and depressing, like it hit you.
Yeah. Could you see this as a movie?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally could too. They'd have to really like streamline it and clean it up a little bit, but it's definitely like it's exactly like Total Recall or one of those kind of hyper like even Starship Troopers, like a Paul Verhoeven movie from the 80s or 90s that's like super hyper what is that called? Like sarcastic about what the future is going to be.
Yeah.
And like it's very tongue in cheek, but it also is calling out things that are real, and it uses that sci-fi cover in order to talk about things that are actually going on in reality.
Yeah. So. I mean, honestly, this would be a perfect time to make this movie.
Yeah. For
like
real.
How perfect.
Yeah.
And then I don't know who, strong upcoming.
I don't know. I don't know. I
who
wouldn't
you
cast
would
it.
cast,
Anything,
but yeah, no, but it was fantastic. Frank Miller, awesome writing. Dave Gibbons, fantastic art. I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
8.5.
Yeah, it's like it's so close to being like a 9, and like for me, I think like just because I got a little confused a couple times.
Yeah,
but it was darn good.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good one. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I liked it so much. I went out and I was like, I need to have these issues. I don't know why I've been sleeping on it. I already knew about this because I read this in 2008 or something for the first time, like the whole series, because they came out with a hardcover, like a big absolute basically of it. And I was like, oh, I'll just buy that. And I read it and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then when I moved here, for some reason, I was like, oh, I'll sell this one. It's not my favorite out of all my stuff. But now it's completely out of print and that thing's worth like $800 or something. So
of course.
I'm like, why didn't I fucking keep that? But who knows, whatever. So either way, I was like, oh, I can buy the issues. The issues are cheap. They're not hard to find. And as far as like on eBay and stuff, and they sell, a lot of people just have good chunks, like full chunks of it. And there's only 15 issues to get.
So you'll be able to get them.
Yeah, so it's a pretty easy, and none of them are expensive. And even like if they made a movie of this, it would definitely go up in price. But like number one is like $5 on eBay. It's not expensive at all. And I think it was $5 when it came out. So
nice.
It's exactly the same price as it was. So, so yeah, I'm going to give this a 9. I really enjoyed it this time, especially with all the similarities to things that have happened or are happening in our current climate of politics and stuff. And also, it called like a lot of stuff that's going on right now. Like the words national divorce are in the news and stuff today. And I was like, hey, that's exactly what's happening in this thing right now. So not with, not the extremist groups like this, but you know, you could definitely see some stuff like that happening. Just maybe different kind of extremist groups, but I just thought it was great in that way, and I really enjoy the story. I love the character and the way that he builds her over the whole book. So I think she's really unique in that way, and no one talks about her. So I thought it would be a good idea to just do this one. It was on our poll, but since probably no one knew who she was, it didn't win. So since the other one was kind of a dud as far as Black history goes, I thought, okay, let's go over like a really good Black character that I enjoy and I think most people sleep on. So I'm glad we got to talk about that. Now, next week, or we're doing our voted episode in 2 weeks, I should say. And what are we doing, John?
So for our voting episode, so if you're a patron, every month patrons get to choose from a poll one episode that we do that month, the following episode. So if you want to be part of that, you can join that. We're doing a poll this month on manga. We haven't done manga in a while. So we're going to do some manga that we've never done. And we've got the Vinland Saga, Berserk, Lone Wolf, and Cub, or One Piece are going to be the choices. So if you want to vote in that, make sure to go to patreon.com/Plain Strange Comic Books, all one word. Sign up. We've got a bunch of different tiers. We've got specific tiers for some of our side podcast that Matt has kind of blossomed into its own thing.
Yeah, so I'm doing a Hellblazer podcast along with a Swamp Thing podcast. The Swamp Thing is free. You can listen to that normally, but if you want a there is a free version of the Hellblazer one too, but that one is way behind where I'm at. I think I'm on issue 59 this week. I think the free one is at issue 15 or 14. So if you want like 40 plus issues extra, you can go to patreon.com/Plain Strange Comic Books and sign up for the Hellblazer tier. And speaking of people who signed up, we had a Patreon or a patron sign up this week. So thank you, Matthew, our new patron. And then also thank you to our old patrons, I should call them, our OG patrons.
Our OG patrons, there you go.
Otaku Mike, Christian, and Hoku.
We appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And also for that Patreon, we do, on all the tiers, you get an extra podcast every month that is only, and it's exclusive for Patreon. So for that, we are going to start a series on a book that you might have been wondering, why the hell haven't you done this already? You're a comic book podcast.
For a comic book podcast, you think this would have already been in there. But we realized after 3 years now.
Yeah, 3+ years, we have not done the most influential or most well-known like comic book of all time, and that's The Watchmen. So we're going to do that, but because The Watchmen is quite a tome, we're going to separate it into 3 parts. So we're going to do, it's a 12-issue series, so we're going to do 4 issues each. And that's going to be like, that's one thing I want to try to do. And if you guys don't like it, like if the Patreons hate it, just let us know that you don't want long like longer episodes, like, or longer part series like that. Because the one thing I wanted to do was like do Berserk, like the entire Golden Age saga, or Akira, the entire saga of that, or just be able to do like finite series that have an ending, but they take longer than one episode to get through, kind of thing.
Or yeah, some of the ones like that, if you want to really get that comic perspective, we don't necessarily, we just want to read the first trade. We might want to read like the full arc of like, like,
well, because even like
trades
this book, the Martha Washington book, we had to skip a bunch because a lot of stuff happens in it, and we just had to like, okay, yada yada yada, and this happens. This is like a major point, but there's a lot of stuff in it, so we don't want to always skip that, especially for something like Watchmen. So we're going to separate that into 3 episodes. The first one is going to take place this month, then the next month, and the next month. So if you guys hate that or something, let us know. But that is the plan for the Patreon, is to kind of do books that we wouldn't normally get a chance to do on this podcast and have the justice done to them, because we don't want to just talk about it for an hour or an hour and a half and like, that's it. We talked about Berserk or whatever. It's done. So
yeah, some things you want to get a little more in depth in, and Watchmen is definitely one that you can't just pick up and be like, all right, that was cool.
Yeah, sure, why not? So and also John has never read it.
How dare you?
John has never read The Watchmen.
Calling me out. I have read pieces of The Watchmen.
Oh, shut the fuck up. I've read a piece of The Watchmen.
I have never sat down and read the entire thing cover to cover.
When you say pieces, what do you mean?
I've read like snippets from it. Like I've read like little...
One page? So you haven't read an issue of Watchmen?
I might have read the first issue.
Okay. Well, we'll figure that out when we get into
we'll see
it.
as we get into it. Yeah,
but I could not believe that. I couldn't believe John has the gall to have a comic book podcast with me and has not read The Watchmen. So
I don't know how I kept that under wraps all this time either.
You've been keeping secrets. You're cheating on me. And so we're going to rectify that for this Patreon this month. And so if you would like that, once again, sign up for patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word, and you will get that extra podcast. And unless there's anything else, I think we're good.
I think we'll see him on the next one.
All right, on the next one. Bye.